today we have a topic. It is called All European Fundraising Campaign for Humanitarian Help to Ukraine. That will be on the 24th of April. This will be the Palm Sunday. And due to the cooperation with the Catholic Church, we will carry out fundraising for those people who suffered in the result of military actions in the territory of Ukraine. And also we are going to tell you about the collection of articles and about the important issues. Will tell us his Beautitude Stanislav Shevchuk, head of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, and Andriy Vaskovych, president of Caritas Ukraine. Good afternoon, everyone. From the very start of the military actions in the territory of Ukraine, there was aggression against our state, and we started to encounter the phenomenon of humanitarian crisis of Ukraine. All the churches of Ukraine, including Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, we believe that this is our Christian responsibility to serve the people who suffered in the result of this unfair aggression. We were always open and volunteered, and we had two mechanisms to serve people who suffered in the result of this war. So these were our communities, our institutions. Also, our church has a charitable organization that deals with such type of social service and provides help for those who need it. And on behalf of our church, this organization is Caritas Ukraine. And here we have Andriy Vaskovych, who is the president of Caritas of Ukraine. We tried to deliver truth about humanitarian crisis of Ukraine to the world community. And we informed the Pope about it. And this fundraising that was initiated by the Pope, this is the start of the broad humanitarian action that the Pope wants to initiate in order to relieve the suffering of those who suffered of the war in Ukraine. This is the words of the Pope. And what was before? What happened then? What was the reason why the Pope called on to fundraise? So, Permanent Council of our church, and I am as a head of this church, we had an audience with the Pope on the 5th of March this year. And we tried to explain to him what is going on in Ukraine today, and we said that this is the biggest humanitarian crisis after the Second World War. And the representative of the Pope, Nunci Archbishop Beautitude, he visited Donbass twice. The first visit was along the line of confrontation, and there he could see people who live in the area of military actions. And also during Easter he went to Donetsk and he saw the conditions in which people live, and the information he provided to the Pope, and it added to the fact that we brought even more information, and the result of this information servicing was that the Pope on Sunday On the 3rd of April, this is the Sunday before the Easter, and the Pope says that this is the heart of the year. And on Sunday, this is the heart of the year. This day is the heart of the year, and the Pope address Catholics of Europe to fundraise in order to help those who suffered in the east of Ukraine. And for all of us here in Ukraine, and of course for those who suffered from this war, several aspects were important. Of course, fundraising is very important, but also it is important that the Pope, he does not keep silence. And you know that people do not want to speak about war in Ukraine, those people who live in Europe. And this is the war about which many people keep silence. And neither media nor other sources, they do not provide information about the war in Ukraine, about the suffering of millions of people. And the Pope, he broke this silence, and he became the voice of those who suffer in Ukraine. And for us, this is even more important than fundraising and how much money will be collected. And secondly, the Pope appealed to the conscience of European Catholics. And by this, he wanted to stress that Ukraine is Europe. Europeans should understand that in the east of Europe, there is real humanitarian crisis. And that's why European Catholics should be conscious of that, and they should respond to the needs of those who suffered in the result of war in Ukraine. And this fundraising, this is only the start. And according to the information that I got today, all the funds that will be raised during this fundraising on the 24th of April, this money will be allocated to the fund that will administer the Cor Unum, the council. It will be the Pope's fund. So this will be the money that the Catholics of Europe provide to the Pope, in the hands of the Pope. But then there will be a humanitarian action, and so these resources are gathered now, and then there will be broad consultation on what is needed for Ukraine and about the number of people who are in need and what are their primary needs, and how best introduce this help to those people who need this help, and what the mechanisms should be used in order that each cent went to the that it should go to those people and to serve the goal that was established by the Pope. So all the institutions of Catholic Church in Ukraine, they will carry out this fundraising next Sunday, and I address the Catholics, and please bring some good values to it, and all our institutions that we have, we should mobilize them in order to carry out this charitable action, and it can be carried out in the best way possible. Our church, except its institutions in Donbass and in other regions, we have Caritas Ukraine here, and also Roman Catholic Church also has its representation in the East, and also it has its Caritas structure.
That's why we have mobilized today all our tools, and we wish to give him in hands of the Holy Throne, and to implement this humanitarian aid within a very short period. We believe that at the level of the of his Beautitude, at the top level, with the assistance of the well-developed structures of the Catholic Church, either Roman Catholic Church or Greek Catholic Church, we will be able to provide for the needs humanitarian needs which raised today. Maybe Mr. Andriy Vaskovych is more competent to speak about those needs. Our church has been working very proactively for all this period in the area of humanitarian needs, because Caritas Ukraine is working very hard, and thank you very much for this opportunity. I think the current humanitarian crisis in Ukraine is the biggest since the years of the Second World War. As of today, we have in Ukraine more than 1,700,000 internally displaced persons who were forced to leave their houses because of the war and occupation of the territory where they resided. We have 9,000 people who were killed in result of this war. That's why we have more than 9,000 families who lost their beloved ones. We have more than 21,000 people who were heavily wounded in course of this war, and this entails a lot of social problems for the society, for the government, for the church. I visited military hospitals and saw young men who lost their legs and hands, and in the future they will require assistance during all their lives. And this is the situation to which we are trying to get prepared. There are more than 1,700,000 people living not in their homes. They are living somewhere. We do not see them because volunteers, because a lot of social workers, they accommodated them. They were accommodated in deserted villages, houses. We do not see those people. They do not queue in lines to the charity soup kitchens, but when we attend them in their places of accommodation, we see how much they suffer. We see elderly people who starve. We see a lot of families who cannot buy the most necessary things to their children. 1,700,000 people is a figure that imposes a huge burden on our society. Let's imagine such city as Kharkiv with its population of 1,400,000 population, and there is more than 140,000 IDPs registered in Kharkiv as of today. These are those people who experienced violence, who survived in shellings. Those children are heavily traumatized. They were the witnesses of military conflict. UNICEF suggests that up to 60–80% of those IDPs children, they witnessed the violence. Of course, Ukrainian society tries to tackle all those problems, but this burden is extremely big for Ukrainian society. For the current year, we need $198,000 to support those families, and these are just minimal amounts of money to support those families. And those $298 million, these are the minimal figures to overcome this humanitarian crisis, and this requires accumulation of efforts from all over the world. And I think this is truly a Christian approach to understand the people in need and to provide assistance to them. I think that people everywhere might understand the needs of people living both next door and far away, and try to support them. From the very beginning of the war, Caritas took the side of all those suffering people. From July 2014, we provided assistance to those people who suffered because of first Maidan events, then after Crimean annexation. First, we assisted to those who left Crimea. Today, more than 20,000 people left Crimea. These are primarily Crimean Tatars and a lot of people who fled from the east of Ukraine. What does the Caritas assistance mean? First, we used the funds coming from abroad to allow people to survive through winter period, to rent an apartment, to buy some food, to buy some primarily medicines, and to buy warmer clothes to survive through winter. And to do this, we involved consultants from other countries where Caritas works, and we used their experience to cover the biggest amount of people. That's extremely important, that we can pay money directly to people who may decide what is of primarily importance for this very person and this very family. This underscores the human dignity of these families and these people. And during that period, we supported more than 20,000 families whom we provided with money, with food packages, and with accommodation. As of today, we have 3 major fields for our activity, which are a result of the current military and political situation. First field of our activity is to pay attention to the non-controlled territories. These are territories which are not controlled by Ukrainian government. The access for the international humanitarian organizations is extremely limited there. We lack information about the real situation, but we definitely know that they have problems with food stuff, they have a huge lack of supply in medicines, etc. And the information which we received suggests that there are people who remain immovable. They cannot move, and unfortunately those elderly, mostly elderly people who remain immovable, they cannot leave this area, and we are very much afraid of the cases when people will die in their beds, being lonely and not attended. There is a big problem there with heavily traumatized small children who witnessed cases of violence. There is a huge problem there with chronic diseases and supply of medicines for those palliative medicines and supporting medicines for those who need medication all the time, like insulins for diabetics, etc. The next field of our activity and next problem is the gray area along the contact line, which is where the access is heavily restricted because of shellings on the one side, on the other side because of the ruined infrastructure, specifically because of heavily damaged roads, which interrupts regular supplies to these regions. That's why Caritas tries to deliver hard fuels there. There are villages in this gray area when there are just elderly people left, when young people all left. And the third field for our activity is all the rest of the territory of Ukraine, all the mainland Ukraine, where IDPs are accommodated, but the major numbers of them are accumulated in the pre-contact line oblasts, and we try to collect some humanitarian aid and delivery to people in need. Also, humanitarian aid in more narrow sense is delivery of assistance to those who do not have sufficient means to survive, and this figure in Ukraine amounts to 3,100,000 people who do not have sufficient means to survive. By the end of this year, representative of the International Foodstuff Program mentioned that in Ukraine there is a risk that 1.5 million people face starving threat because they do not have sufficient means for maintaining themselves. That's why I think we should pay more attention to those who are in need today. I think that a conscientious understanding of this huge problem is a primarily request for people both in Ukraine and abroad. We should take responsibility about those people and provide assistance to them. Moreover, I believe that the more important thing is to provide people with prospects for the future. Many people who are in need today, they wish to restore their normal lives. They wish to be employed, and that's why charity organizations and the government are obliged to create jobs for them and allow them to restore their lives, to be able to maintain themselves and their families. And I believe that the action which we have announced for this Sunday will allow us to get this necessary resources. What I would like also to mention that His Beautitude Pope Francis not just encouraged people to be gorgeous, but to be generous, but also he promised to allocate big sum of his personal funds. Oksana Klemenchuk, I would like to ask a question whether the sum which will be allocated by His Beautitude is known, and the second question whether there will be fundraising only in Europe, not around the globe. The fundraising action is announced for the European Catholics, but I also made an invitation to the Ukrainian Catholics, to the Greek Catholic believers in Ukraine, in Australia, in Latin America, everywhere around the world. I know that Archdeacon in Australia, for example, also
Fundraising.
I know the amount of money allocated by Pope for these needs, but I have no permission to disclose it. Whether we will have a high guest from Vatican here this week. This fundraising action is aimed at a collection of money, and also we expect to announce the humanitarian action, and for this action, we expect to have Cardinal Petro Paolina from Vatican, and I expect that he will arrive to Ukraine and announce about a humanitarian Pope's action in Ukraine. The date of his arrival is not precisely established, but the intention is very strong, and we expect him to come and announce the beginning of this humanitarian action. As of today, the Apostles' Capital has been collecting information about the real needs in order to imagine what minimal resources are needed to organize such an action properly. But for that very action, I have defined 4 types of addressees. First of all, we will deliver assistance to all who suffered in result of this conflict, irrespectively of their beliefs, ethnical situation, etc. So the objective is to provide assistance to all those who suffered because of military conflict. First of all, this will be IDPs. Then there are people who remain in the temporary occupied territory, like in a trap. We understand that this is one of the most needy groups for this assistance. Then those people who physically remain close to the contact line. And the 4th category, these are wounded people, including servicemen, including children, and all sorts of other people who were wounded in result of this military conflict. That's why we should properly register and count those people, and in order to be able to provide them assistance. We have some time. Would you like to ask further questions?
UCMC, I have a comment. There will be fundraising, funds will be raised, and then there will be humanitarian action, but is there understanding whether it will be dependent on the Pope or who will distribute those funds? You said about several categories of people to whom these funds will be provided, but 30% of these are, for example, wounded in ATO servicemen, 32 the people who live in the zone of conflict. What is the mechanics of the distribution of these funds? I cannot give you a comprehensive answer to this question because we are searching for the answer at the moment. So each humanitarian action of the Catholic Church, it has a mechanism. Firstly, they appoint Pope representatives to some humanitarian mission. And all the competences are provided to identify the needs and what amount is needed to be provided. And this will be Pope's action. That's why this representative, it will have some mechanisms here in Ukraine, and these mechanisms are our institutions here. We have 2 structures of Caritas, Caritas of Rome Catholic and Caritas of Greek Catholic Church. And also our institutions in the territory. And this will be the mechanisms that will bring this help, but there will be a separate representative in order to articulate this correctly. And we are at the stage of studying this issue, and the Church prepares the mechanism. And there is experience in our organization, and we had some events, we have had some actions in the Middle East, and our experience can help us a lot here in Ukraine. I would like to add some technical issues about the distribution of assistance. this will be established by the Pope, but the direct assistance, we have great experience in Caritas. We, as the world organizations that have 165 national organizations, we have huge experience of providing help to people in difficult humanitarian situations and wars and conflicts. Caritas in the world, Caritas that is united by Caritas Internationalis. This is the biggest humanitarian structure in Europe, and we work in order to help those who are in need. And as to the situation in Ukraine, Caritas Ukraine, together with its international partners, Caritas of America, Catholic Relief Services, and Caritas of Germany, or Caritas of Austria, we created expert groups that reveal and study those needs that are among the people, and we work locally, directly with those who are in need, with volunteer organizations, in order to see the needs and how to respond to those problems, and what are the main mechanisms, how to bring this help to an individual. And here we have people who have big experience in how to directly help a person in an effective way without logistics problems and without expenses for administration. Do you have other questions? Please ask. If there are no questions, thank you very much for your participation, for your interest in helping distribute information about this fundraising, because we see this humanitarian crisis here in Ukraine, and we also said about the mechanisms through which the Church will help to overcome this crisis. But also it is important that there should be a basis that will be collected on the 24th of April throughout Europe and in Ukraine included. And it is important to inform Ukrainians about this fundraising. And of course, it would be difficult for us to do it without you. So thank you very much for your interest, and we hope for further cooperation with you. Until the next time, goodbye.